Tabletop role-playing games have been captivating our imaginations for nearly half a century. From epic battles in mythical lands to chilling mysteries in darkened alleys, these games have given us countless stories, unforgettable characters, and lifelong friendships. Today, we're taking a look at the first 5 games that would be inducted into a hypothetical RPG Hall of Fame. These are the games that broke the mold, set the standards, and left an indelible mark on the world of tabletop role-playing. Let's dive in. Our first inductee needs no introduction. Dungeons & Dragons, the game that started it all. Created in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D, is the granddaddy of all tabletop RPGs. Drawing inspiration from war games like Chainmail and fantasy literature like Lord of the Rings, D&D introduced a revolutionary concept, a game where players assume the role of characters in a fictional world, going on adventures crafted by a dungeon master. With its iconic polyhedral dice, leveling mechanics, and character classes, D&D laid the foundation for what would become the core mechanics of the role-playing genre. It was a game that encouraged creativity, strategy, and camaraderie. The sheer impact D&D has had on gaming culture and its continued dominance today make it an undisputed first choice for the Hall of Fame. D&D didn't just create a game, it created a culture. From the satanic panic of the 80s to the massive resurgence brought by Stranger Things and Critical Role, D&D has been at the heart of tabletop gaming's evolution, and that is why it's our first inductee. Our second inductee takes us from the realms of high fantasy to the dark, mysterious world of cosmic horror. Released in 1981 and created by Sandy Peterson, Call of Cthulhu was a groundbreaking RPG based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft. It introduced players to a different kind of role-playing experience, one where madness, not might, was the greatest challenge. Unlike its predecessors that focused on dungeon crawling and combat, Call of Cthulhu emphasized investigation, atmosphere, and psychological horror. The game's sanity mechanic was revolutionary, adding a layer of depth and realism to the experience that few games had explored before. It asked players not just to survive encounters with otherworldly horrors, but to maintain their grip on reality while doing so. Call of Cthulhu carved out its place in the RPG landscape by proving that tabletop role-playing could be more than just combat and treasure. It could be about mood, tension, and storytelling. For its innovative mechanics and the lasting impact on horror role-playing, it earns the spot in our Hall of Fame. Next, we travel to the stars with our third inductee. The game that took tabletop role-playing into the vast unknown of space. Published in 1977 by Mark Miller, Traveler was one of the first RPGs to move beyond fantasy settings. It offered a detailed science fiction universe where players could explore, trade, and engage in galactic politics. Traveler introduced many innovative concepts to the genre. Its character creation system, which could lead to a character dying during generation, was both infamous and beloved. It wasn't just about rolling stats, it was about creating a life story. Characters in Traveler came with a rich backstory, shaped by prior careers, education, and even life events. This encouraged role-playing from the very start, creating a universe where every character had depth. Traveler's emphasis on exploration, diplomacy, and its rich, open-ended universe has inspired countless sci-fi RPGs since. It boldly went where no RPG had gone before, securing its well-deserved place in our Hall of Fame. Our fourth inductee brought a darker, more personal kind of role-playing to the table. Enter the world of darkness with Vampire the Masquerade. Released in 1991 by White Wolf Publishing and created by Mark Ryan Hagen, Vampire the Masquerade broke new ground by emphasizing storytelling and moral dilemmas over combat. Set in a dark urban fantasy world, the game explores themes of power, humanity, and the monstrous nature within us all. Vampire storytelling system gave more narrative control to the players and the storyteller. the game's equivalent to a dungeon master, and introduced mechanics that supported social interaction, personal horror, and political intrigue. The game's gothic punk aesthetic resonated deeply with fans, leading to a new wave of role-playing games that prioritized deep storytelling and emotional engagement. Vampire the Masquerade was a cultural phenomenon that expanded the horizons of what RPGs could be and do. Its influence on RPGs, LARPing, and goth culture cannot be overstated. That's why it takes its rightful place in the RPG Hall of Fame. Our final inductee for this inaugural class is a system that aimed to be all things to all players. Created by Steve Jackson and first released in 1986, GURPS was a bold experiment. A modular, genre-agnostic system that could be adapted to any world, any setting, and any style of play. Want to be a space marine fighting aliens? You got it. Want to play in a medieval world of knights and wizards? No problem. GURPS was the ultimate toolkit for game masters and players alike. GURPS stood out for its flexibility and depth. The system's core was rooted in realism and customization, allowing players to create complex, detailed characters that could function in any setting. It appealed to those who wanted to craft their own worlds and stories without being limited by a single genre or setting. GURPS' influence is felt in the many universal systems that have come since. Its adaptability, modularity, and comprehensive approach to role-playing make it a foundational pillar in RPG history and a fitting choice for our Hall of Fame. These 5 games, Dungeons & Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, Traveler, Vampire the Masquerade, and GURPS, represent the pioneering spirit of tabletop role-playing. They each brought something new to the table, be it groundbreaking mechanics, compelling storytelling, or innovative world-building. Their legacies are woven into the fabric of the hobby, shaping the way we play, think, and dream. And that is why they are the first to be honored in our hypothetical RPG Hall of Fame. There are so many RPGs out there that have impacted our play experiences. Agree or disagree? Let everybody know in the comments below what would be your first inductees in the inaugural class of the RPG Hall of Fame. Thanks for watching the video. Much appreciated. Don't forget to like or subscribe, and be a positive force in tabletop RPG hobby. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya. I didn't prepare, so off the cuff, D&D, Traveler, Vampire, Cyberpunk, Paranoia. Oops, took the question of the day off. Here we go. Michael Holland says D&D, WEG Star Wars, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, Palladium riffs. Ooh, riffs. Need some riffs. D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Shadowrun, Marvel Phaser Rip, and Apocalypse World by Tyler. Whitebox BX, AD&D 5e Osric. Todd Crapper, D&D, original Whitebox. Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, Tim not short of opinion. D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Shadowrun, another one we don't say editions, right? Vampire the Masquerade. Because some will say, oh dude, not that version, right? Not that edition. Too funny. Call of Cthulhu, Shadowrun, Vampire the Masquerade, Apocalypse World as the first 5. Fate might be number 6. Matt Catron, good to see you. D&D, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, Deadlands, and Traveler. Capricorn continues. Traveler, number 2, 3 BRP, 4 D&D's OG original game, and then 5 Braunstein. Gabe says original white box to number 2, first edition AD&D, 3 Traveler, 4 Call of Cthulhu, 5 Rollmaster 2E. Wow. Ryan West, Vampire the Masquerade, Gamma World, Shadow Dark, best version of D&D. Woo. Strong words. Strong words. WEG Star Wars and Traveler. Blake says Dragonbane. Look out! Monster of the Week. WEG Star Wars, The Between, and Vampire the Masquerade. Okay. Aaron, good to see you. D&D, Traveler, MERP, GURPS, and COC. Ted, Call of Cthulhu, Rune Quest, Apocalypse World, Quiet Year, and Traveler. Wayne, AD&D, Apocalypse World, Vampire, WEG Star Wars, Rune Quest. Mr. Hobbs says D&D, Metamorphosis Alpha, Call of Cthulhu, Traveler, Deadlands. Joe says D&D, he probably found out the question of the day before I even recognized he asked the question. Joe says D&D, Vampire the Masquerade, GURPS, WEG Star Wars, Savage Worlds. Flint, D&D Red Box, number 1. 2, Gamma World. Number 3, Star Frontiers. I'm starting to see a theme here. Where's he pick up? Where are you, Flint? 4, Top Secret. 5, Marvel Superheroes. This TSR shill will now yield the floor. I was going to say. Andy Hall, good to see you. Merp, Toon, Weg Star Wars, Boot Hill, Villains and Vigilantes. Ooh, look at those early ones. Arrogant says D&D Call of Cthulhu Champions. Champions is a good one, I guess. Nobody's mentioned. GURPS, Fate, Apocalypse World. Gabe says, for the record, I also haven't ever played 4 out of 5 of my nominations. That's all right. Much respect for not going to the ones, right? I think that's saying something. Like, it may not be your game, but you got to kind of I think that's another thing too. Like, if you're going to be a positive force in the tabletop RPG hobby, part of the whole thing is recognizing games for what they are, whether you like them or not, if they're your bread and butter or not. You don't have to play them. You don't have to like the rules. You got to recognize it for what it is. So if it brought up a different mechanic or something new that hadn't been seen before, or has a certain niche, or something was derived from it, or something like that, inspired others, like that, I think is to be, is to say something, right? I'll step down now.